Last time on the show, we got a chance to sit down here in the Sports Corner with Emmanuel Berbari as he talks about his new post as the new voice of the Hudson Valley Renegades. Here's part two of that interview. I was thinking maybe we could kind of overreact this morning because Yankees take 2 of 3 from their rivals Boston on the opening weekend at the stadium. And the Mets, of course, doing pretty well, too, out in our nation's capital in D.C. They take 3 out of 4 from the Nationals. Buck Showalter and company looking pretty good. I mean, is this the year, E-Man, when we see another Subway Series here in New York?
It's possible. I feel like the question gets at least broached at the beginning of every year, whether it could be that repeat, whether the Yankees and the Mets completely come to fruition and kind of lock heads at the end of the season. I think this year has a better chance than a lot of the recent years. I may have said that a few times over the past few years and been wrong about it, but I think this time around, viably with the Mets, you have the right man in charge in Buck Showalter. You have the pitching to do it, especially if Jacob deGrom comes back and it's Jacob deGrom. And there seems to be a different connectivity with that Mets team, getting runners on, getting them in, and a different unity that was brought about maybe by all those hit by pitches over the weekend against Washington. You see Buck Showalter leading the charge out of the dugout. So very high on what the Mets can achieve this year, especially if the pitching pans out. And then with the Yankees, I think it's like recent years. You expect them, especially with the expanded playoff format this year, to punch a ticket, get to the playoffs once again. And then it's kind of a wait and see mode. Do you get Garrett Cole rolling at the right time in the playoffs? Do you get timely hits when you desperately need them? And I think Josh Donaldson, as you saw on opening day, could be a big lift for this team, just given that psychological edge that maybe they've lacked the last 2 years.
It was so funny to see so many people tweeting out about how, Donaldson, of course, has had some issues with Garrett Cole in the past. Yankees seem to squash that when they bring him in, the former MVP. And at the end of the day, it was Donaldson that ends up picking up Cole on opening day.
Yeah. Funny storyline there, how that was the question. And then Cole starts opening day. Donaldson bails him out, essentially. I think they're proving that as long as Donaldson gives the offense what they need in terms of that edge, and Cole is Cole, winning's going to heal a lot of those past wounds.
I said on the show, first walk-off Yankee home opening win in over 60 years. And again, I mean, I think the best part of opening day, the best part of April are usually, this time of year. I know we had the lockout, so we're kind of starting a week later, but best time of the year for baseball fans because everybody starts out from square one and just that kind of renewed hope, kind of like how spring seems to be for most of us, that there is that chance. There's that chance that we can win a World Series.
Yeah. I know I was texting a few friends just kind of with those hopes and dreams after the first couple of games of the season. You see Anthony Rizzo get off to a red hot start, just the perfect Yankee, it seems, since he came over at the trade deadline last season, and the perfect guy to re-up, re-sign, especially on a short-term deal. Seems like the Yankees could end up getting a steal out of the Rizzo contract. And it just seems like the right guy with that right field porch at Yankee Stadium, championship DNA coming from the Cubs where he won as a lifelong Cub. And after those first 2 games with that extra maybe it factor with the Yankees coming in, you start to, with that clean slate, that blank canvas, start to hope and dream, hey, maybe this could be the year that the Yankees get off the schneid for the first time in 13 years.
These last 2 years, of course, have been very interesting times, E-Man. I mean, we had you very first on the show as a college student that had pretty much seen their junior year at that time kind of wiped away by the pandemic, things put on pause. Then you got a chance to come back on the show at FUV and in BronxNet to talk about what it would be like to kind of get going again and finish up your senior year. And I think, thankfully, we've kind of turned a corner when it comes to the pandemic. And I also think there's been a lot of progress in a lot of ways when it comes to the real world, which is a good thing, of course. I think we're seeing it also in the sports world. And one of those headlines the last couple of weeks has come courtesy of the Yankees, and that is Rachel Balkovec, who has made some news in the minor league system. I figured I would get your perspective on that because I was pretty excited to see that news.
Yeah, really incredible. And I think the overarching takeaway has been, I heard it talked about, I like that they did a segment about it on Sunday Night Baseball. I think it was the 7th inning where they were talking about different things they saw throughout the week. And they mentioned what happened with the Tampa Tarpons and making history. And everyone shared the sentiment in that she's not only groundbreaking in the sense that she's the first at that level to do what she's doing, leading a professional baseball team within the Yankees organization, no less, but her credentials are profound. The experience checks every box that you would have hoped for, stepping in to that big league dugout. So you can see that the respect commanded across the game is so huge. And I think it's a perfect, like we talk about those glass ceilings. It's a perfect person to lead the way and to show that it can be done. And now that she's done it, especially with those credentials and checking all those boxes, it shows you can forge a similar career as a young lady and really make your way what's been a male-dominated sport.
It's taken too long, but it's, like I said, very happy to see that there's been some progress in some different areas. And also pretty cool that she gets a chance to manage Jason Dominguez, because that's another up and coming star for the Yankees.
Yeah, I feel like he's been talked about for 3 years now. And a lot of that talk began before he even started playing with the Yankees, just with the hype, the demeanor, knowing what he can become, the immediate comparisons to Mickey Mantle, if we're going to go that far, in the Jeff Passan article. But yeah, he looks the part. And I'm even seeing tweets the last few days with his games down in Tampa where, the ball's leaving his bat at 109, 110 miles an hour. So he seems to be another one of those exit velocity type kings, and someone who could, if things pan out, make a pretty quick trip through the system. He's 19 years old, but we've seen, I'd make the direct comparison, not to put too high of a bar on him, but Juan Soto came up at 19 years old. So could Dominguez be up by age 21, age 22? I could see that for sure. So I think this year will be a big one in terms of how he performs in Tampa. Maybe he gets up to Hudson Valley. And then once you get to the high A, double A phase, you're pretty much knocking on the door.
And speaking of young players, I think that are making some strides, but shifting gears in terms of sports, I know you got a chance to call some Fordham games against Dayton when Obi Toppin was a star there. It's taken them a little bit of time with the Knicks, but now that they're out of it and they're giving them a chance to play, Toppin looks like the real deal. Your thoughts on Obi Toppin?
Yeah, the biggest difference late in the season, which has kind of been jaw-dropping, is the 3-point shot. He always had it, but it wasn't necessarily something he unleashed or hit consistently. And if he can do that, the athleticism has always been there. It's always spoke for itself. Always been a big fan of what Toppin can do. And he's a guy who electrifies a crowd with his athleticism, the oohs and ahs. So I think what the Knicks have tapped into, maybe not as, okay, let's just roll the band back together and start quickly Toppin and all the young guys next season. I'm sure there will be some changes to be made, but you think twice about some of those midseason talks about, who are we dealing off? Which of this young core are we dismantling when the season was a disappointment for the most part? I think Quickly and Toppin are making bids. They're making cases for, hey, if you give us some run over 80, 82 games, maybe they could turn into some of those franchise pieces that the Knicks have been longing for. You just look at their stat lines in that home finale back to back, and you're like, this could be the future. So it'll be very interesting to see how the Knicks approach that, because the future of Julius Randle may coincide with how much run those guys get next year and what the team looks like.
Well, man, it's great to talk future stars with a future star. I appreciate you taking some time on the show. It's always awesome to see you.
Appreciate it, Bobby. Always nice to see you too, and appreciate the kind words.
Absolutely. I mean, hope springs eternal. We got your career on the rise. I feel like the Yankees and Mets are doing pretty well. It's great to see Obi Toppin playing well. The Nets, of course, in the postseason. Even the Rangers clinching, maybe have a shot at the Stanley Cup. Good times here on the show. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, great time of year.